What happens when a CEO pretends to be a janitor and ends up finding the one thing he never expected: someone sleeping on the job during a live event? Elias Grant stood in silence, arms crossed, staring out the tinted window of his office that overlooked the main stadium concourse. From up here, the place looked perfect, clean, organized, alive. But the rising wave of customer complaints painted a different picture: rude staff, endless lines, garbage piling up during events, and a few too many safety concerns. It had been 7 years since Elias bought the stadium business from its previous owner, a man who'd let things slide far too long. Elias had poured in money, hired a new district manager, and created a 5-location chain, each tied to a stadium or arena across the state. The flagship site, right here in downtown Chicago, was the biggest and the most problematic. He'd never met most of the hourly staff. The company had grown too fast. Now, all he got were filtered reports from his district manager, Roy, who always said the same thing: minor hiccups. Nothing we can't handle. But Elias didn't trust that anymore. He needed to see it for himself. "I'm going in," he told his assistant. "As a janitor," she blinked. "Sir? I want a real look. No one will talk honestly if they know who I am." They set it up fast. A fake name, Ellie Gordon. Clean shave, brown contact lenses, thick-rimmed glasses, and a stitched-on uniform. The new hire paperwork was quietly processed through a temp agency the company used when they were short on cleaners. The next night, Elias walked through the employee entrance of the stadium, mop bucket in hand. The manager on duty, a woman named Carla, barely looked up. "You're the new guy. Go check in with Hector by Section C. You'll be on trash and spills tonight." Elias gave a quiet nod. No one recognized him. Why would they? He never visited in person, and the handful of staff photos in the break room were from before his time. The place was chaos. It was a concert night, 20,000 people packing the stands. By the first hour, Elias had already swept up spilled popcorn, cleaned a soda-soaked bathroom stall, and watched 2 vendors argue behind the hot dog stand. But it wasn't all bad. He noticed a skinny young man hustling between rows of seats during cleanup, helping an elderly usher with a broken trash cart. "Thanks, man," the usher said. "You don't have to. Nah, it's cool. You got a bad knee, right? I got this." Elias noted his name tag, J. Down near Section F, a woman in a neon vest was guiding an overwhelmed mother with 2 crying kids to a quieter seating area. "Take a breather here," she said gently. "I'll get you some water." That was Haley. Elias made a mental note, but not everything was like that. 2 hours into his shift, Elias stepped into the side hallway behind Section D. It was quieter here. Security staff usually rotated through this zone. But what he saw stopped him cold. Slumped in a folding chair under a dim light was a security guard. Mid-40s, heavyset, arms crossed over his chest, snoring. Elias froze. He looked around. This hallway led to a stairwell that connected to the lower suites and VIP tunnel. No cameras. No other staff nearby. If someone had wanted to sneak in, this would have been the spot. He stepped closer and cleared his throat. "Nothing, sir." Still nothing. Elias leaned in. "Hey, security." The man jolted awake. His eyes darted around. "What? Oh, hey, you need something." Elias kept his voice flat. "You were sleeping." The man rubbed his eyes. No. "Just resting my eyes, man. Long shift. You know how it is." Elias said nothing and walked away. His heart was pounding. Later in the break room, he found Haley pouring herself a coffee. "Hey," he said, keeping his fake voice steady. "Is it always like this? People sleeping on the job?" She raised an eyebrow. "You saw Frank, didn't you?" "Frank? He's been here years. Night shifts only. Says he's got sleep apnea or something, but I've seen him out cold more than once. Carla won't do anything. Says she doesn't want to deal with the union rep." Elias clenched his jaw. "You ever tell the district manager?" She laughed, but it wasn't funny. "Roy, he stops by once a month and leaves after 15 minutes. He doesn't care." That night, Elias didn't go home. He stayed until the last fan left and the last trash bin was emptied. He watched Jay helped clean a clogged drain even though his shift was over. He watched Haley carry a box of lost and found items to the office so nothing got stolen. And he watched Carla brush off a complaint from a vendor who said another guard was rude to a wheelchair-bound guest. Elias didn't sleep that night. By morning, he had a plan. Elias returned the next evening as Ellie Gordon, slipping in through the same back employee entrance. This time, his shift began in the lower concourse, an area he hadn't touched the night before. The schedule had been updated, and he was paired with a janitorial crew led by a stocky man in his early 60s named Russell. Russell's voice was hoarse but steady. "You're new, right? Don't let anyone give you grief. Stick with me tonight and I'll show you how to keep your back from going out." Elias nodded, keeping quiet. They started under the bleachers, working methodically. The air down there was thick with damp concrete and stale beer. It was quieter than the upper levels, but messier. Fans tended to sneak food and drinks down and leave everything behind. As they moved from one section to the next, Elias noticed how Russell bent at the knees and used his forearms to lift heavy bins instead of relying on his back. Even after hours on his feet, he didn't slow down. "You've been doing this long?" Elias asked, keeping his tone casual. 14 years. I was here before the new ownership, back when the plumbing barely worked and we got paid 2 days late every week." Elias kept his expression neutral. "The new guy, whoever he is," Russell continued, "he fixed a lot. Better supplies, new lockers, but I haven't seen him. You know how it goes. Once they get that office on the top floor, they forget what a mop bucket smells like." Elias didn't respond, he just kept mopping. Around 9 p.m., things started to pick up. A local college rivalry was playing out on the field and foot traffic surged, the upper walkways flooded with fans. On his way to dump a trash bag, Elias passed a young woman behind a souvenir kiosk. She was shifting uncomfortably, rubbing her shoulder. "You good?" he asked. She looked surprised he spoke. "Yeah, just pulled something. I've been restocking all day. They cut my partner's hours, so it's just me tonight." "You tell your manager, doesn't matter. He's not here, he left after lunch." That caught his attention. "What do you do if you need help?" she shrugged. "Wait until someone walks by." Elias looked around. No supervisor in sight, no radio, no one checking in. He left without saying another word. By 10, he was back near the security checkpoint by the tunnel entrance. Frank, the sleeping guard, was gone. In his place stood a younger man with buzzed hair. He was alert, eyes tracking the crowd. "Busy night," Elias said, pausing with his cart. "Not bad," the guard replied. "Just keeping eyes open." "You'd be surprised what people try to sneak in." Elias didn't push the conversation, he just noted the difference. Someone had rotated Frank off the post. Whether it was coincidence or fallout, he didn't know yet. Back in the break room just after midnight, Elias found Jay sitting at a folding table unlacing his shoes. His shirt was damp with sweat. "You always stay this late?" Elias asked. Jay shrugged. "I wait for my sister to pick me up. I don't drive." "You ever think about moving up? Supervisor or something?" Jay looked at him like the question didn't make sense. "Man, I applied 3 times, never even got an interview. Carla says I'm too new, been here almost 2 years. Elias leaned forward. "She tell you that directly?" "No, her assistant did. Carla barely talks to me. I'm just the guy who unclogs stuff and cleans puke." There was no bitterness in his voice, just acceptance. Elias didn't say anything. He got up, dumped his cold coffee in the sink, and went back to work. At 2 in the morning, with most of the staff gone and only overnight custodial left, Elias walked the perimeter one last time. He paused near the west entrance, where a cluster of vending machines hummed beside a locked maintenance door. He heard voices. 2 employees, one in security black, the other in janitor gray, were leaned against the wall, deep in conversation. "I told her I'm not picking up her shift again. I've got my own problems. She's always crying about something, just ignore her. She's lucky she even has this job looking like that." Elias stepped closer, silent. The janitor laughed. "No kidding. I wouldn't let her near customers if I was in charge. She's got that face like she's always mad. And that hair, what is she, from the 80s? The security guard added. I heard she tried to report someone again last week. Probably made it up. That's what they do when they want attention. Elias walked directly into their line of sight. The janitor froze. Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. What's your name? Elias asked, his voice low. The security guard squinted. Why? Name, Jason. Why? Elias pointed to the janitor. And you, Leon. He stared at them both. You're both done. Get your supervisor now. Jason straightened. Hold on. What's this about? I heard everything. You think mocking someone's appearance and accusing them of lying about harassment is acceptable? Leon tried to laugh it off. Man, we were joking. Come on. You're not coming back tomorrow or ever. Get your supervisor. Jason started to protest, but Elias cut him off. Now, they left without another word. By 3 a.m., reports were filed. Carla was called. Supervisors were notified. And Elias, still in uniform, sat alone in the break room, staring at a cup of vending machine coffee and thinking about what he'd just heard. This wasn't about one sleeping guard anymore. It was systemic. Apathy. Disrespect. People picking up the slack while others coasted or worse, created a toxic environment for the people trying to make things better. And Roy. The district manager hadn't shown his face once during both nights Elias was on shift. Elias pulled out his phone and drafted a message to his assistant. Bring Roy into the office tomorrow, no delay. I want him in at 8 sharp, and find Haley. I need to talk to her before her shift ends. He hit send. Then he sat back and waited for the sun to rise. Elias stood at the window of his office, no disguise, back in his tailored jacket and pressed slacks. The skyline beyond the stadium was just beginning to glow with morning light. His reflection stared back at him, tired, sharper than usual. 2 nights on the ground floor had stripped away any remaining illusions. At precisely 8, a knock at the door broke the silence. Roy stepped in, eyes already scanning the room like he'd walked into a negotiation. You wanted me in early, he asked, setting his tablet on the edge of the desk without waiting for an invitation. Elias folded his arms. Sit down. Roy hesitated but obeyed. He sank into the chair across from the desk, crossed one leg over the other, and gave a polite half-grin. Everything all right. You don't usually. I spent the last 2 nights working the stadium floor. Roy blinked once. You mean walking the concourse? No, I mean I mopped bathrooms, cleared trash, and watched people do your job for you. Roy's grin faltered, but he tried to recover. If this is about the cleaning crew I've been meaning to, it's not just about cleaning. You haven't been present. Carla's been making decisions without oversight. Staff are being overlooked for promotions. And you've allowed a culture to grow where people mock their coworkers behind their backs and leave injured employees unsupported. Roy leaned forward slightly. If you'd given me a heads up, I could have made sure. I didn't want a show. I wanted the truth. There was a long silence. Roy reached for his tablet. Elias held up a hand. Don't, this wasn't a discussion. You're being let go, effective immediately. Roy's hand froze. You're serious. I'm not interested in excuses. You've had months to show leadership. You chose distance. Roy stood slowly. If this is about Carla, I can talk to her. She'll be facing her own conversation shortly. Roy's mouth opened again, but Elias had already turned his attention to a list on his desk. Security will escort you out. Your severance paperwork will be emailed to you. He didn't look up again until Roy was gone. An hour later, Elias was in the lower-level staff office across from Haley. She was still in her neon vest, her name badge clipped to her jacket. The fatigue on her face hadn't faded. I know it's early, Elias said, but I didn't want to wait another day. Haley sat straight, unsure. You've been helping people without being asked. You took initiative when others ignored problems. That does not go unnoticed. She blinked, surprised. I just try to do the right thing. You've been here how long? Almost 3 years. You ever asked for a promotion? I asked about shift lead once. Carla said she needed someone with more assertiveness. Elias leaned back. You're being promoted to operations lead for the evening shift. Effective next week, you'll report directly to me for now, Haley's voice wavered. I don't know what to say. Say yes. She nodded slowly. Yes, thank you. He stood and offered his hand. You earned it. By midday, Elias had called a full manager's meeting. Carla was the last to arrive, walking in 10 minutes late, holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. She scanned the room and froze when she saw Elias sitting at the center of the table. I need to speak with you alone, he said. The room cleared quickly. Carla stayed standing. I wasn't aware you were conducting floor audits. That was the point. She shifted her weight. If this is about Frank, this is about your entire leadership approach. You've been delegating responsibilities without oversight. You've ignored misconduct reports. You've let long-term employees apply for promotions and get brushed off without proper review. Carla's posture stiffened. I've run this place efficiently. That's what matters. No, that's not enough. You've created an environment where the wrong people are protected and the right ones are ignored. That ends today. I've been here 5 years. I've kept the place running. At what cost? Carla didn't answer. You're being relieved of your duties, effective immediately. Your access badge will be deactivated by the end of the hour. Her voice dropped. You're making a mistake. No. I'm correcting one. Once she was gone, Elias called in the HR director and had them begin reviewing Carla's pending disciplinary files, some of which had been left unresolved for over 6 months. By afternoon, Elias was walking the floor again, this time in his own clothes. Staff turned their heads, unsure how to react. Some looked away. Others nodded cautiously. He found Jay dragging a stack of mop buckets back toward storage. Jay, Elias called. Got a second? Jay stopped, startled. Yeah, Elias came closer. You applied for a supervisor role 3 times, right? Yeah, never heard back. I heard. That changes today. We're opening a shift supervisor position on evenings. I want you to take it. Jay stared at him. You serious? You've been doing the job already. The title and pay should match the work. Jay didn't respond right away. Then, I thought I was invisible here. Not anymore. They shook hands. At the security desk, Elias asked to review the rotation logs. The supervisor on duty, a tall, quiet woman named Denise, pulled them up. Frank wasn't scheduled again, was he? Elias asked. No, sir. After last night, I took him off the list. You made that call. I heard what happened. I wasn't going to risk another incident, Elias nodded. That was the right move. She hesitated, then added, there's a few others I've had concerns about, not sleeping but things like ignoring protocols or checking their phones too often. Write up the names. We'll do one-on-one reviews. Denise nodded and turned back to her screen. By nightfall, the stadium was buzzing again. Another sports event, another wave of crowds, but the energy on the floor had shifted. Staff moved with a little more purpose. Supervisors checked in with their teams more frequently. And Elias was walking the main concourse, eyes open, listening not for problems but for the small signs of change. Near the concession stands, he spotted the young woman from the souvenir kiosk, the one who'd been nursing her shoulder. Today, she had a second staffer with her, and someone from maintenance had secured a cushion mat under her station to help with the long-standing hours. He didn't stop to introduce himself. He just kept walking down the hallway where only 2 nights ago he'd overheard a conversation that forced his hand. The hallway was quiet now. Clean. Staff passed through with purpose, not whispers. Elias paused near the stairwell and looked down at the floor. The same spot where Frank had been found asleep. No one was stationed there tonight because now it was covered by rotating pairs, each with a check-in system logged every 30 minutes to prevent blind spots. Everything wasn't fixed. The staff still worked long hours. Some departments were still short-handed, and there would be more difficult conversations ahead. But the silence in that hallway tonight wasn't dangerous. It was calm, and for the first time in weeks, Elias let himself breathe. Elias walked into the operations office on a gray Thursday afternoon, the last of the week's triple-header events looming just hours away. The room had a different feel now, less rushed, more focused. Staff moved with intention, checking clipboard rosters and posting updates on the whiteboards lining each wall. Haley stood by the scheduling board, marking shift rotations with a dry erase pen. She didn't notice Elias until he was a few feet behind her. "You comfortable with the revised coverage for tonight?" Elias asked. She turned, slightly startled. "We're stretching, but it's doable. I've been rotating breaks in 15-minute blocks instead of full half hours just to keep coverage steady." "That decision yours?" "Yeah, good." Haley set the marker down and crossed her arms. "One thing I wanted to flag. The new hire on concessions, Rachel, she's getting flustered under pressure. I've had to pull her aside twice. She making mistakes that affect customers? Not major ones, just freezing when the line backs up. I think she needs a quieter spot until she gets her rhythm." "You think she'll grow into it?" "She wants to. That's more than I can say for some." Elias nodded. "Shift her to stock tonight, let her handle backfill, give it 2 weeks and reevaluate." She picked up the marker again. "Done." Elias turned to leave but paused. "You still working that double on Saturday?" "I'll be fine." "Fine isn't the goal." Haley looked at him. "I'll manage, but yeah. A second-floor lead would help. I've got someone in mind." He left the office and made his way through the back corridors toward maintenance. As he passed the mechanical room, the sound of clanking tools and low conversation filtered out. Inside, Jay was kneeling beside a pipe junction, tightening a valve while talking with a younger staffer. "Start slow," Jay said. "You overcrank that, you'll shear the threads." The kid nodded, watching closely. Elias waited until Jay finished, then stepped inside. "You free for 5? Jay wiped his hands and stood. "Sure." They stepped into the hallway. "I've been reviewing the night coverage," Elias said. "You've been filling in across 3 roles." "Yeah, lot of gaps. I didn't mind." "I do. Starting next week, I want you training a replacement for your evening shift route. You'll transition into a permanent floor supervisor role, not just in title." Jay blinked. "You sure? I mean, I'm still learning parts of the back end." "You're not stepping out of the field. You're stepping into the team that fixes what isn't working before it becomes a problem." Jay exhaled, nodding slowly. "All right, I'll get someone ready." "Good. Start with Morris. He's been consistent." Jay looked surprised. "Didn't think anyone noticed him." "I did." As Elias made his way upstairs, he stopped near the suite-level security checkpoint. Denise was reviewing a clipboard with 2 guards, both wearing newly issued windbreakers. The uniforms had been updated, nothing flashy, just cleaner lines and better visibility patches. "Denise," Elias called. She excused herself and walked over. "We've rolled out the 30-minute check-ins you asked for. Uptick in accountability already." One guard caught a busted lock on the west stairwell last night before it became a problem. "What happened with Jason and Leon's replacements?" Jason's slot went to someone from the reserve list. Leon's was filled by a temp, but he's not cutting it. "Complains about every assignment." "Terminate the temp. I'll authorize a pull from full-time applicants instead. We don't need placeholders." Denise nodded. "Understood." As he turned to leave, she added, "Appreciate the new radios, the old ones cut out in the south tunnel. This new batch holds signal. Keep tracking issues. Anything persistent, escalate to me." He continued down the back stairwell, bypassing the elevator. He wanted to see it all, every level, every corner. The place had changed, but not by accident. It had taken hard choices, and there were still more ahead. Down near the loading dock, Elias spotted Russell, the seasoned janitor who'd mentored him his first night undercover. He was leaning against a bin cart, sipping water. "Hydration break?" Elias asked. Russell grinned faintly. "Union says I get 2 10-minute rests. I figured I'd use one for once." "Glad to hear it. You've been steady since day one." "Gotta be. Place doesn't clean itself." "You ever train new hires?" "Used to. Carla pulled me off that rotation last year." Said I was too old school, Elias raised an eyebrow. You want that responsibility back, Russell chuckled. If they can keep up with me, sure. Then it's yours. Starting next week, you're the senior custodial trainer. I want the next wave of hires learning from someone who knows what quality looks like. Russell nodded once. I'll make sure they're better than I am. That's the idea. Later that day, Elias convened a full department heads meeting in the conference suite. Chairs filled quickly. Some faces looked anxious. Others curious. Elias stood at the front, no slides, no notes. We've had a wake-up call, he began. And we've made changes. But this isn't about punishing a few people and calling it progress. This is about setting a standard and holding every inch of this operation to it. Heads nodded around the room. You're not here to manage problems. You're here to prevent them. That means knowing your people. Not just their names, but how they work, what slows them down, what helps them succeed. He paused, letting the silence settle. We're implementing monthly reviews, not just for performance, but for environment. If someone's being mistreated, overlooked, pushed too hard, or left unsupported, I want to know. And if you're the reason they're being overlooked, I'll know that too. No one spoke. Second, internal promotion tracking. Every time someone applies for a position and doesn't get it, they're owed a written explanation. Not a brush off, not silence. If they're not ready, we help them get ready. A few department heads exchanged glances. Third, zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind. We've already removed 2 employees who crossed that line. If it happens again, there won't be warnings. He looked across the room, locking eyes with each team lead. If you're not sure where the line is, ask. If you're not willing to uphold it, step aside now. The room stayed quiet. Last thing, I'm not going back to the top floor and staying there. I'll be on the floor every week. Random shifts, no schedule. If you see me in a vest and gloves again, don't be surprised. He stepped back from the table. Get to work. Over the following weeks, the stadium didn't become perfect, but it became better measurably. Turnover dropped. Guest satisfaction rose. More importantly, the staff started to believe that what they did mattered. Rachel, the flustered new hire, found her rhythm in inventory. Morris stepped into Jay's old shift and picked up the pace without needing reminders. The temp Denise had flagged was replaced by a guard with prior experience in crowd control, who quickly earned respect by stepping in during a medical emergency without hesitation. And Elias, true to his word, kept showing up. Sometimes he wore his suit, sometimes the vest, but every time he listened. One night, after most of the staff had gone and the stadium lights dimmed to their standby glow, Elias stood near the east tunnel, looking out over the empty seats. Jay walked up beside him, mop in hand, wearing a new supervisor badge clipped to his belt. "You ever think it'd look like this?" Jay asked. Elias didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. "But I'm glad it does." They stood in silence for a long moment, the echo of quiet maintenance work humming in the background. Then Elias turned, nodded once, and walked back into the heartbeat of the stadium, the people who kept it alive.